is back in Paris. And I myself will be back there in a couple of hours in order to coordinate all the necessary measures to be taken.
Well, also in Brussels is my colleague Christian Fraser. Christian, I suppose one of the first tests of its kind for the French president, who's been in office less than a year.
Yes, and obviously people will point to the fact that the state of emergency in France was dropped in October and replaced with a sweeping anti-terrorism bill, which was widely supported in the French Parliament. And I have to say, though, the laws that were in place really replaced many of the laws and the powers that the police had under the state of emergency. So they have the ability to search houses, to put people under house arrest, to put cordons around sensitive areas, all that sort of thing. So I think it would be unfounded to say that Emmanuel Macron has dropped the ball here by bringing to an end the state of emergency. What interests me, having formerly been a correspondent in Paris and covered a lot of these terrorist attacks over the last 4 or 5 years, is that yet again, this was someone, according to the president, who was known to the DGSI, the Interior, Domestic Intelligence. We said before that there is an extensive list within France, a list called Fiche S with around 10,000 names on it. And it's just impossible to monitor all the people that they know or consider to be a threat to the state. So if you look back at recent attacks, you've got the Kouachi brothers who staged the Charlie Hebdo attacks. You've got Mohamed Merah, who was the gunman in Toulouse, the man that attacked the train, the Thalys train between Paris and Brussels, and so on and so on. So very often there are people, known extremists in France, who are on this list, but are either not under house arrest, not deemed to be a specific threat at any one time, but certainly intelligence is there on them. So that's probably the first thing. I've just been reading La Dépêche, which is the local newspaper in the south, and they seem to have very good information on what has been happening. So just to recap, they were saying that this morning this gunman opened fire on a group of CRS policemen who were out training, out jogging. One policeman was hit in the shoulder, they say. Obviously, I can't vouch for these details, but this is coming from the local area. And they say that 2 people were killed as he hijacked a car. He then arrived at this supermarket, and they are reporting that a butcher inside the supermarket and one of the customers was killed. So they are saying that 4 people have been killed. Again, that's not confirmed, but that's what the local newspaper is saying. And they also have a reporter on the ground who saw police come out of the supermarket shouting, "We've got him, we've got him." So as we've been reporting earlier, and it tends to be the case in these situations when they're dealing with someone with the background of this particular attacker, RAID, the anti-terrorist police, tend to go in pretty quickly because, as we know, very often in these circumstances, the terrorists start to kill people and they don't want to take that risk. So it was, I think, somewhat inevitable that they were going quick and going hard.
And Christian, from what we saw there from President Macron, what sense do you get of how much of a role he will be playing in taking ownership in the aftermath of this event, how visible he's going to be?
Well, it is a sensitive issue for France, of course, given what has happened in recent years. And clearly, he's been kept informed while he's been here. We were expecting a press conference a little earlier than when we got it. So maybe he was involved talking to the Prime Minister and making arrangements from here. And he's going back to Paris, in fact, any minute now, and he'll be back there in a couple of hours. But the Interior Minister has been sent to the scene. The Prime Minister is coordinating things from Paris. The Paris prosecutor, as ever, will be involved in it. And so, Paris is well used to this, unfortunately, and so all the provisions will have been put in place. And also, they have teams that are highly skilled in these sort of terrorist incidents. So the gendarmerie sealed off the area very quickly, and then the anti-terror police were there. And once they had a cordon in place and an understanding of what it was, then they finished it pretty quickly. Interestingly, according to the local newspapers, they're saying that in this instance they brought his sister, and his mother to the scene, maybe to try and talk him out of that situation. If that wasn't going to work, then, as I say, they were going to go in and ensure that he didn't kill any more people.
Okay. Christian, thank you very much. Christian Fraser in Brussels, where we have just heard from the French President Emmanuel Macron, who is on his way back to Paris. Let's go to Paris now and speak to Hugh Schofield. And Hugh, if you will just bring us up to date with what has happened over the last half hour or so.
Half an hour ago, exactly, the assault was ordered by police chief in charge, and we don't know the detail, but special forces will have moved in, and the man, we are told, has been abattu, which means killed, and the hostage, and we believe it was just one hostage, was released. There's an intriguing detail which will need confirmation, that the hostage was a gendarme, a member of the gendarmerie, who had offered his place to replace a hostage of one of the customers or staff from inside the supermarket, and had gone in voluntarily. That remains to be confirmed. It would be intriguing if it is true. In any case, we can say that this incident is over. It has certainly focused the attention of France and of the authorities here very, very intensely over the last 3 hours, because it is a recrudescence of Islamist terrorism, it would seem, in France, something which we haven't seen for 6 months since the last attack. In fact, last year we could almost say felt like a real reprieve, or the level went down markedly last year, 2017, compared to 2016, which had seen that series of attacks going back, of course, to 2015 and the Paris attacks. It had died down. The last attack here in France that you could attribute to Islamists was back in October in Marseille. So there has been a long period, but as Macron was saying, the situation has changed. It's no longer a case of waiting for armed attacks organized by a network or an organization out in Syria, Iraq. It's the so-called Islamic State that is sending networks of people out to commit these attacks. It is now, once again, as we've seen in the most recent ones last year, local people who have become radicalized either totally by themselves on the internet or in small groups, often communicating on social media. But these are not people who've been out in the region and come back in general. And of course, what now we wait to see is the profile of this man. But I would bet he's a local man with a background in petty crime, because that is the profile.
And Hugh, the day's events didn't begin in this tiny town of Trèbes. They started in nearby city of Carcassonne. What happened?
Well, there are 3 incidents. It was a spree. We've seen that before as well. I mean, a man decides to go for it, and he goes for it, and it can be a succession of different events. It's only later that you piece together what happened. And I'm still not entirely sure of the order, because there were 3 attacks, but I'm not sure in which order the first 2 came. The first 2 were the shooting of CRS police who were jogging, 4 of them who were out jogging wearing sort of civilian.
Once again, guys, here we go again. It's non-stop in it, this.
And that may be an indication that he's a local man.
Giving you a clean.
Seriously, but not life-threateningly. There's another incident in which he hijacks a car. Christian referred to that. It's not clear whether 1 person or 2 people died in that, but I'm told 1 person, the passenger, was killed. The driver.
There you go, nice and clean.
And he gets the car. Now, it would seem to be logical that incident preceded the shooting of the CRS police, because apparently that took place from a car. So I'm guessing that the first incident was the hijacking of the car and then the CRS, but I don't know that. In any case, what we do know is that it concludes with the 3rd incident, which is a few kilometers away to the east of Carcassonne. Carcassonne, of course, a well-known tourist town with a small city and so on. Trèbes, a much less well-known town, just a short distance away to the east. And that's where he parks his car and goes into the supermarket with his gun firing. And we know that 2 people are killed there, possibly others injured. And there's a movement of panic. A lot of people escape or are allowed to go by the gunman, and he's left, it seems, with 1 person. And this is eventually the gendarme, who may or may not have volunteered to go in the place of an actual hostage. The details there are not known to us. And then half an hour ago, or 2.5 hours after it all started, there is what we could predict, an assault by special forces, and he's killed. I say we can predict it because, as I was saying, when we started reporting at the beginning, I do not think this will last. There are clear orders and plans in place to act quickly when there are Islamist radicalized terrorists on the loose. On the one hand, there is a standing order now, ordered by the last Interior Minister, that no incident should take place in France more than 20 minutes from where special forces are positioned. And so very quickly, they would have been on the scene, probably from Toulouse, which is by helicopter or certainly on the motorway, not that far away. Maybe also in Carcassonne itself. In any case, they would have been on the scene very, very quickly. But as I say, the orders are quite clear. In these situations, you do not let the things drag out, because there is a risk of the person involved killing the hostages. So you have to assume that the man at the centre of it all is someone for whom his own life does not really count, and he might well go ahead and take others with him. And so that is why one could have predicted, and we did predict that this would be quite quickly, and it is.
Hugh, thank you very much for the moment. Hugh Schofield in Paris. Well, with me is the BBC's Hélène Galfard, who's been monitoring French media and social media. And just back to what Hugh was saying there, the quickness that the forces arrived, this was overwhelmed. I mean, when you look at what has happened in France since 2015, more than 240 people killed in jihadist attacks. France really has changed.
Yeah. I guess it's we always had these kind of threats of attacks, but since 2015, since the Paris attacks, 3 attacks at the same time, coordinated, it has become now part of, we have to be protected, we have to think about it, we have to make it like part of our daily life now, to think how we're going to react if something like this happens. So as I was saying earlier, many of my friends are saying they've had training, special kind of training through work, at school, on how to confine yourself, how to hide under tables, what to do. And then obviously the police is now on high alert. And as Christian was saying earlier, even though the state of emergency was lifted in October 2017, we still had a law that was put in place that was very controversial, because this law was basically putting the state of emergency in kind of a long-term, it was not as extreme as the state of emergency, but it's basically giving a lot of power to the police to go and raid houses.
I'll tell you what I think, right? You cannot trust the people who make a decision because of God before they make a decision for themselves. If you're too stupid to be a good person without the Bible telling you to be a good person, you're probably too stupid to believe in the Bible. This is, you should be able to make decisions and be a good person off your own back. And these people are bad people, and they're bad people that follow an ideology that tells them to be bad to people who don't follow that ideology. It's ridiculous.
Yes, because, that's why it makes you think that he's probably from the area, because there is this very big, training army, military place, in the area. So he would have probably known that there were these kind of military trainer,
I think now everybody on this planet should be worried about this. You should worry about Islam, because it is Islam all the time. And people say that that's racist, but that's not racist. I remember when the IRA in Ireland were terrorists, and let me just block that off a minute. Yeah, well, do you know what? You know I'm an atheist, so you know my beliefs on that. But I remember when the IRA were terrorists, and very, very active terrorists in and around Ireland and especially in England, and people were scared of the IRA. It was a terrible time. It was awful, and you were scared to go to shopping centres. You were scared to go in airports, where if you heard an Irish voice, it made you aware that there were Irish people around. And that's not racist. That was because Ireland was very, very active in terrorism, and they scared people. And you should be wary of terrorism. And Islamophobia is not a real thing. You should be scared of Islam. You should have a phobia about a religion that is trying to take over the world. Be aware that that's what they're trying to do. It says that in their book, and that's what they tell people. They are constantly telling you Islam will take over your country. There should be Islamophobia. It's a scary thing. And until our government react to it and start attacking Islam and closing it down in our countries, then this is going to go on all the time. This is it's an important thing, and people say it's racist. It's not racist. Islam is not a race. Islam is a religion or an ideology, and it's an ideology of terror. So get used to it, guys. It's horrible. So there you go. I don't think there's any. I mean, you could say that Christians were terrible people in the past, and yeah, they've done some horrible things. And same with the Jewish and Catholics. They have done some horrible things in the past, but not anymore. Everybody's grown up with the world and moved on, but Islam hasn't. Islam is not an accepting religion, and there you go. There's my thoughts on it, and I'll put this back on now.
That's it. Moscow denies responsibility for the attack on a former spy and his daughter and said the EU was following an anti-Russian campaign hatched in London. Damien Grammaticus reports.
For Theresa May, something new. A summit where the UK sees eye to eye with other EU countries. Mrs May now knows, dealing with Russia at least, she has solid support here.
They agreed the United Kingdom government's assessment that Russia...
There you go, guys. I think that's finished, so let's shut that down.
And that there was no plausible alternative.
I don't know how to put my camera on.
And how about this for a change?
Let's see. I'll do that in a second.
Brexit negotiator, some Gallic gallantry for Mrs May. Michel Barnier was about to brief EU leaders about his negotiations with the UK. On Russia, some countries, Lithuania among them, may now follow Britain and expel Russian diplomats who they believe are spies.
National measures will be applied already starting from next week. What from your country? From another country.
Ireland led calls to toughen up the EU response on Russia and is also considering expulsions.
Bear in mind what the United Kingdom did was to expel 23 diplomats who they believed weren't actually diplomats, were agents. So we would have to do a security assessment just like they did before that. We're not going to randomly expel people who are genuine diplomats perhaps.
So for Mrs May, this has been a happier summit. The EU has closed ranks too when it comes to Brexit. Once Mrs May was out of the room, 27 other leaders agreed negotiators can begin. Some issues still require agreement, notably over Ireland and the border, if negotiations are to progress. For the future partnership, the EU says the repeatedly stated positions of the UK limit the depth of a future partnership, meaning if the UK is outside the single market and customs union, the divergence in tariffs and rules will necessitate checks and controls at borders.
I do have the biggest hangover today.
We will now be sitting down and determining those workable...
1 second, guys, and I'll be with you.
But also for our future security partnership and
Scissors.
economic partnership. And I believe this is in the best interest of both the UK and the EU.
To get those partnerships, though, Mrs May must now find a solution that keeps the Irish border open. The key to the future. Because BBC News Brussels.
There's been my colleague Christian Fraser, who's in Brussels for us. Christian was interested to hear from Emmanuel Macron, and he said basically that the attack on the UK was an attack on European sovereignty. I think this is exactly the sort of language Theresa May went to Brussels to seek when she wanted this backing of
Wake up suddenly.
Yeah, I think she'd be well satisfied actually with the sort of response that she got here, because as we know, it's been a bit of a test of whether
Just need to pop out to my car. Be back in a second.
could it rally the European Union around issues of security and defence, and the resounding answer to that is yes, she can. They had a trilateral meeting last night with the French and German leaders, and she presented, we're told, intelligence that they were perhaps not aware with and very aware of. And very shortly after that, you got this statement which the three of them had put together, which said we're extremely concerned. It is very likely that it is Russia. We don't see any other plausible explanation, and that's really the attitude that the other leaders have taken as well. In terms of what concrete action we're likely to see from here, I mean, anecdotally, and you heard some of the leaders there from Lithuania and the Taoiseach from Ireland, we're probably talking about between 5 and 10 that say they're going to take action, which might amount to expelling Russian diplomats or Russian spies. Some of them will wait until they've got
Russian spies.
A result from the OPCW. They want to see the evidence that will probably be produced next week, but nonetheless, they seem pretty convinced by what they've heard from the British side.
Okay, guys.
But there are always splits when it comes to foreign
Let's
policy.
shut this guy up.
In Europe, you've got countries like Italy and Greece who take a slightly softer line on Russia.
Shut up. What's happened there? Don't know. Right then, guys. Here we are in heaven with a massive hangover. Got me water. I don't know what you mean. Well, I will look. As soon as I get second to pull my finger out, I will help you out and I'll get in one of those videos. But right now, it's a busy time in heaven. So, guys, what do you think about the terrorist attack in France? Tell me what you think, because obviously I've told you my thoughts, and I blame religion. I can't see that there's anybody else at fault other than religion in that, as usual. Do you think? Good luck with that. You have a song about it. Oh, I'll take a look at that. I'm using the new YouTube live button. Have you all got that? It's like before I used to have to go to use Google Hangouts when I went live, and now it just opened up a program that I didn't even know that I had on my computer. Today at 5 o'clock, God's new video will be out. Wow, God's new video. It took me about 5 minutes to make it. Get in, 5 minutes. I don't know. I know. It's weird, isn't it? It's a difficult one because, and especially some of you guys who believe in God, you don't want to judge somebody's God. Whereas me, I couldn't give a toss because I'm not judging so much judging the God. I'm judging the people that believe in a God, and I don't believe in what they believe in, so I'm judging them. You know, in my eyes, there's no God getting upset because of what I said. In my eyes, it would be awesome if I was wrong. If we had a talk about this last night before I staggered in at 2:15 in the morning, that I hope I am wrong. I hope that there is a God. Would that not be just absolutely awesome if there was a God and I was wrong? And I get to the gates of heaven and there's a guy waiting for me and he goes, right, let's have a word with you, pretend God. I'm God and you've talked to me like shit for a long time. And you've slagged me off. And I tell you what, you're wrong, but I'm going to forgive you. How good would that be? If he said, because he's at the gates and if he gives everybody and he loves everybody and he said, I forgive you, I'd be like, well, do you know what? I've lived a good life. I lived a good life here and he's still letting me in. This guy's awesome. That would be a cool thing. I promise you that if it is a thing, if I get there before you guys, I will come back and let you know. The first thing I'll do is sign into my Wi-Fi in heaven and I'll go on YouTube and I'll say, do you know what? It's real. I'm completely wrong. There is a God. And he's pretty cool because he let me in. You would have thought, show. Yeah. If I am wrong, he's letting me be wrong. He's not stopping me. He's not saying, oi, that's enough shit from you. He's just letting it go on and on and on and on and on. So pretty cool of him if that's right. Shall I tell you what I'm doing here? God makes artwork. Makes artwork for the greatest fighters in the world. So this office behind here, I've had in the last 2 years, I think I've had 4 or 5 world champions in my office. So right now, I'm concentrating on making their artwork for their clothing and stuff. So that's what I'm doing. I hope he does like my videos. World champions, proper world champions, like the toughest men, toughest fighters on the planet. So I've had the Taekwondo world champion in for a certain age or weight. I won't tell you which. I've had 3 world champions at karate. They're the best in the world, and regular away. An ex-world champion comes in here all the time, so I'm doing something for him now, and he'll be in here. I don't know. Better send him a message and find out what time he's coming. Yeah, so they're coming here. They all make me look like a little small, weak baby. So, but they are the proper athletes, aren't they? Not like in the days when you could just be, you'd see overweight boxers. You don't see overweight fighters anymore. That's a nonsense. You can't survive. What time you want to come? There's beauty up above. Things we never take notice of. Wake up suddenly, you're in love. Yeah, so sorry I'm not right chatty. If this Paris thing comes back on TV, I'll put that back on so you can watch it. But the BBC are the ones that don't really tell you the truth. Well, they do. They tell you what's happened, but they can't say to you who did it because they never speak out about any religions because they're sort of the heart of the English government. They're weak people. And we pay for this channel. We pay for the BBC to represent nobody's views. Bonkers, totally bonkers. Right, guys, I'm going to go. But remember, 5 o'clock, God's new video will be online. So don't forget to have a look at that. It's going to be it's going to make you cringe because it is a bit grim. I'll see you later. See ya.